Let's get back to one of our top stories now and the new questions that are arising in the growing controversy surrounding the Internal Revenue Service. Agency officials grilled by Congress this week over their excessive spending practices and the so-called swag bags that were given out at really lavish conferences.
Were you thinking this will never be seen? Or were you thinking, how will this look when it is seen?
When we have episodes like this, it has an impact on the average person. I live in a block where most people don't even make $50,000 a year, but yet still we can produce a video that has no redeeming value. None.
These items, like 3,000 of them, were given to all the participants, over $60,000 of these types of trinkets. We note in the footnotes on what was in these swag bags is that it also included, and I'm kind of confused by saying this, a plastic squirting fish.
We're going to find out more about that fish. Ohio Congressman Turner, a Republican and member of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. Good to see you, Congressman.
Jamie, thank you for having me.
You know, these conferences were supposed to be all about training managers of the IRS. So that fish and other things in these swag bags, what was the point of those? What did they learn from this experience?
Well, it doesn't appear to have any redeeming value. And on the Oversight Committee, we basically have two goals. Find out who approved this, hold them accountable. And second, try to make certain this doesn't happen again. What we heard from Russell George, the Inspector General, who did the review here, is that basically the IRS had created a slush fund. They had cannibalized vacant positions, saving up this money so it would have lower scrutiny, and then spent it on a lavish party for themselves.
And they had a number of things. They had the line dancing, they had the parties, the swag bags, to the tune of, as was brought up in at least that one hearing, more than most Americans make in an entire year. How long before you really know the extent of this?
3, 4.
Well, I think we're going to get to the bottom of it relatively quickly. And the goal of finding the source of these funds really helps us, because then we can make this, prohibited so that they're not able to do this again. Cannibalizing the funds that they have that are supposed to be going to personnel, saving them up so they have lower level of scrutiny on those funds, and then spending them on a lavish party is a practice that needs to be stopped.
So it was deliberate and knowing. That's what you're describing.
Right. It's backdoor budgeting is what it is. They put together a budget that bears scrutiny, that says, let's say they need 100 people on a project, and then they go and, fill just a portion of the positions, and then they use those monies and shift them over to other funds and throw a party.
I hate to do this to you, but you're double boxed right now with the Gilligan's Island takeoff. That was one of the videos that they produced, which just to most Americans, I'm sure, seems quite ridiculous. But I want to ask you about the Oversight Committee's role in all of this. It seems so many hearings going on over at least this one issue. Was there any way to have known that this was going on ahead of time?
Well, since this was backdoor budgeting, we would not have known. But now that the IG has found these monies and has told this happened, we can go in and try to prohibit it. But basically, this gets down to, who are the people at the IRS? Who would actually think that this would be a provable government expense, that they would spend this type of hard-earned money that the Americans send to the IRS on such lavish parties for themselves?
So who should take the fall? How high up do you think you have to go to get things like this approved? And is the IRS the only agency that in the back of your mind you think does this backdoor budgeting?
Well, and actually, that's the interesting point that you've made, and I'm preparing to drop a bill that would prohibit this type of slush fund creation within agencies. I bet it's hundreds of millions of dollars. Here we see in the IRS it's over, $50 million that was done in this way. And clearly there are people up the chain of command that must know. It's not just the people who approved the party or attended the party. Someone had to approve the transfer of these monies from personnel accounts over to essentially a party account.
What should happen to that
backdoor
person
slush fund budgeting?
Congressman, what should happen to that person?
That person should lose their job.
That's it?
That person should lose their job.
It's not against the law what they did?
Well, unless we find a crime, and that's something that the IG is going to pursue. It is possible that as this went through that crimes were committed. It could be that there were extra monies and commissions that were paid, monies that ended up in people's pockets that could have been illegal. The IG is reviewing that. Our committee is reviewing that. If there are any crimes that are found, absolutely people need to go to jail.
I imagine that people who are having to pay their tax money in and aren't getting their refunds in time are really angry about this, and it sounds like you are too. You're going to get to the bottom of it. What is the White House position on this? Do you think that they should address it more or ultimately take responsibility?
Well, absolutely. You know, all these agencies ultimately report to the White House, and the White House has a culture of spending. They believe that, you know, when government spends, they create jobs. And so they don't have the level of oversight that we all expect that government should have with our hard-earned tax dollars. I mean, this should have been something that the White House was on and that prohibited across the government. To let people throw these types of parties for themselves at taxpayers' expense is outrageous. And certainly the White House, at a time when we had budget constraints, at a time when we've got sequestration that's grounding planes in the Air Force, certainly the White House should have been taking a look at everybody's budget, making certain things like this don't happen.
Kind of hard to deny that it happened, too, when you have the video footage that we've seen again and again. So my question to you is this. People are really angry about this. And these people are still at their jobs. Doesn't it appear to you that many of these people involved are still at their desks?
Yes, it's outrageous, and that's why we're trying to get to the bottom of it. You know, many times people make light of congressional investigations, but really, you know, getting to the bottom of these things, government on its own, these agencies do not police themselves on their own. Even if we become aware of abuses that are within them, without congressional action to get in and find out what really happened and who did it, and to hold people accountable, many times people will go without consequences. We're going to make certain there are consequences.
And you know what, Congressman, I know I work in the private sector, but if my co-anchor and I made a Star Trek video, a Gilligan's Island takeoff, or spent company money on line dancing, you know where we'd be? Out on the street, immediately. So we appreciate that you're on this for us.
You should be, and that's absolutely.
Come back and
Thank
tell
you.
us how this all works out.